Hopefully it works. All right, hey guys, I'm Jeff Lewis. I'm our head of product, actually for our financials product line here at Procore. So, I think folks may have seen me from Procore Pay announcement yesterday, but I also oversee our owners effort and actually came from a company called Honest Buildings. That was a company Procore acquired about 3 years ago, and we were entirely focused on serving owners. So imagine owners like Brookfield, Hines, WeWork, back when that was a very marquee name for us in 2019. Obviously things have changed a teeny bit since then. But I spent a lot of time with owners, and I'm super excited to talk about kind of how Procore thinks about owners and why they're so important and impactful to our business. All right, cool. So I think you guys have seen this slide, pretty similar to what Wyatt was showing earlier, but I sort of zoomed in on the owner to make it a little bit bigger because at the end of the day, there is literally no project without an owner, right? So at the end of the day, owners are so important and impactful to the construction industry. They're the ones who come up with these ideas in the first place, right? So if I'm, a Whole Foods and I want to build a new Whole Foods, well, until the Whole Foods development team picks their site, comes up with the funding for that new store, comes up with their financing, comes up with the business plan. There's no architect working on that. There's no general contractor working on that. There's definitely no specialty contractors working on that. So the owner basically brings all this to life because they want to go build a construction project. So our ability to sell into that owner is so important for creating this network effect and being sort of upstream of all the work that will ultimately flow down to general contractors and subcontractors. And in fact, owners also have a really big ability to influence the software that other folks on the project use, right? So if the owner has a project, no general contractors get attached to the project, what the owner says about what technology will be used on that project is very important. And it's a really interesting moment for the owner to often even mandate Procore. I was sitting with an owner last night and they say they only work with general contractors who use Procore. And so imagine if you're a general contractor who does not use Procore, you want to work with that owner. That's a really interesting way that we sort of spin these flywheels that we've talked about before. So owner, very important part of just the stakeholder map in general. Owners have a lot of problems when it comes to construction. So the first thing I will say is that finishing a project on budget is of critical importance for the owner. So for example, going back to that Whole Foods example, let's say Whole Foods is going to cost $20 million and it ends up costing $25 million. Who's on the hook for that extra $5 million? Whole Foods, right? So they either have to increase their CapEx budget for that year, do less store openings, somehow come up with the extra $5 million for that store. The general contractor who's building that honestly probably makes more money in that case because it went over budget, because they're often getting a percentage of the construction budget. But the owner is very, very, very focused on ensuring their projects don't go over budget. Same thing with time, right? Going back to this Whole Foods example, imagine Whole Foods opens 1 to 3 months late. Well, nobody's going to be going in there to buy groceries that day. That is lost revenue that Whole Foods doesn't have. Similar for really any type of construction project you think of. Similarly, quality, right? If I guess they have burnished concrete floors in the Whole Foods, right? If those aren't done at high quality, you have to come back in 2 years and fix them or refloor them. Who's on the hook for that? Not the general contractor. Whole Foods has to go do that. So that's some really important things the owner has to think about. They also are mostly dependent on these folks. I think Wyatt did a good job of talking about why the owner can't just go down to the mechanical contractor and give them instructions. You have to route that through the general contractor. The owner is very dependent on all these folks they're hiring to actually collect that information and even figure out where they stand. And then the last thing I'll say is that all the owners we serve aren't just doing this at a single location. They're doing this across multiple states, across multiple countries even. They're doing it at this gigantic scale where they're not just dealing with one general contractor, right? Construction is, at the end of the day, a local business. So if I am, Whole Foods, Brookfield, NG, any of these companies that use Procore today, you're dealing with many, 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 many general contractors across many, many different regions. And so that's obviously a very difficult thing for them to roll up all that money and look at that and figure out where they are on budget, schedule, quality, et cetera. So this is a picture we took in a real life owner's office of a gigantic stack of paper because historically this is how they've managed tech, how they manage their construction projects. They don't have a lot of tech. This hasn't been an industry rich with technological innovation. So when you go talk to owners today about what they're doing, you're going to find binders, spreadsheets, accounting solutions, none of which are purpose-built for managing this stuff. The other thing I'll say is, and I sort of referenced this before, but there's a lot of different kinds of owners, right? There's the one-off owner. Maybe I'm somebody who just has a single construction project. You're probably going to hire an owner's rep or, a general contractor who's going to help you with that. You likely don't need to purchase Procore to manage your construction projects because you just have one. Probably good enough to collect that information from the GC on that project. But as you think about scaling the number of projects you're operating, your need to have a system in place to manage all that stuff goes up exponentially. And when we look at the TAM for owners, that's kind of where the majority of the owner TAM is. Up market, folks who are managing lots and lots and lots of construction projects, and for them to just be logging into their GC's Procores on all these different projects to try to, go to the CFO of, Whole Foods and show them where we are in our construction budget, doesn't make any sense at all, right? They need to be able to have their own system, and so that's really where Procore plays today with owners. And it's working well. I think Paul mentioned earlier, we definitely do work with real estate developers, as you can see on the left side. Obviously, some of the biggest industrial estate developers in the U.S. and globally use our product for all different types of properties, right? Commercial office, hospitality, residential, especially multifamily residential. So there's, even within that segment, there does happen to be a lot of diversification, but most of our owners' business is not real estate today. It's corporations. Obviously, I referenced Whole Foods, but take a look at some of the logos on there, right? You've got Equinox opening gyms, Walmart opening stores, Boston Children's Hospital creating new wings and new facilities to actually serve their customers. We have industrial and energy folks, right? So think about all the wind farms, all the solar farms that are being built throughout the U.S. Think about refurbishments of existing natural gas power plants. People are leveraging Procore to do that today at a massive scale. And then importantly, also public sector. So we've made really strong inroads with city and especially state governments over the past few years, and we have a really nice set of projects. And so I think what this does is that, and Tui talks about this a lot, this creates a lot of sort of diversification in the different types of owners we deal with, but they all have the same fundamental needs, right? Is my project on budget? Is my project on schedule? Is my project being done in high quality? They're all thinking about these problems in a similar way, and so we can build one tool for owners that works really well across all of these different owner types. The other thing that's exciting is that, and this is probably the, 20th flywheel we've shown you all today, but it's exciting because Procore has all these different ways to create flywheel effects. But as I was talking about before, there is this very big owner mandate effect, right? Where an owner, before the GCs have the job, can say, you are going to be using Procore on this project. And in a lot of cases, that's great. The GC already uses Procore. Everything is good. But we've seen time and time again, the GC doesn't yet leverage Procore. They're not going to not do that job because they don't have Procore. They're going to go get Procore for that specific job. So that's a way we sort of get inroads into some of our larger GCs. Owner mandate grows and grows and grows. Eventually, the GC says, well, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I should just be using Procore. And so that's one way we get leads for GCs. The other thing is most owners hear about Procore because they get invited in by their GC, right? So their GC is using Procore. They're probably using it as a selling point to that owner of, hey, we manage your project very efficiently. We use Procore. You can log in and see where your project is at. The owner goes in there, sees that, and says, you know what, I should probably be doing this on all my projects, and sort of creates this other end of the flywheel where more owners now come into Procore. So really cool way to see that flywheel spinning, and we've seen really good traction spinning that both ways. And it also creates this really cool advantage for Procore, right? One of the biggest reasons that an owner, would buy Procore is they say, Procore sounds great because all my GCs already know how to use it, right? So I was talking about before, one of the issues that an owner has, understanding where they are against budget, understanding where they are against schedule, is they have to actually go collect that information from people, right? And so if they're using a platform that most GCs aren't used to, most GCs aren't leveraging today, much harder to get that group of folks to log into that system. If you're using Procore, all the GCs already know it, much easier to get them over that curve to actually come in and submit the information to you through Procore. So a really huge sticking point, or selling point, that gets them excited. Sort of creates a competitive moat, right? Because we have the largest collection of GCs using our product. Nobody else has that. Really interesting inroads to get owners. And it also creates a very sticky platform because at the end of the day, it's very hard for an owner to switch away from Procore onto a different system if their GCs aren't there, right? So we think this just creates both value on both sides, but also a very sticky dynamic with a strong competitive moat. So I think that at the end of the day, this has worked really, really well, right? So the owner's business has grown substantially over the past 3-4 years. And here are some of the examples of owners who are using this successfully today. So Boston Children's Hospital is a good example of this. I've spent a lot of time talking with BCH folks. What they're really trying to get out of Procore is what is that one central place where I can log in and see all the projects that I have going on across all my different buildings and instantly understand where they are on budget. And so they use Procore heavily for the financial management components. I will also point out that Boston Children's Hospital, in many cases, does work with GCs who use Procore. In fact, I see one of them in the audience here. But they still found that it was so important for them to be able to see all the projects they're working on across all their general contractors that then investing in their own Procore instance made a ton of sense. Obviously, I mentioned there's multiple different kinds of projects that are being done here. Engie is a good example of a customer who's leveraging Procore to build wind farms, to build renewable power plants all over the country. And so they've seen really strong reduction in change orders due to using Procore to be able to better track and capture all the change orders. Ultimately, what this allows them to do is finish their projects tighter to their original budgets. That allows them to use the same annualized CapEx budget on creating more, bringing more new kilowatts online, which obviously at the end of the day is how they drive revenue. And we talked about this a little bit before, but Whole Foods has also used Procore very successfully, across our budget management tools, across our quality tools, across our core project management tools to ultimately deliver their projects more on budget, more quickly, at a higher quality level, and importantly have visibility into issues that may arise as they're going through that. So again, a lot of diverse examples of different owners leveraging this, but at the end of the day, they're all really trying to solve that same core problem of, I have many projects, which ones of them are at risk, which ones are behind schedule, which ones are off track from a budget perspective. If there are some that are off track from a budget perspective, which ones are going well, and how can I reallocate some of the budget from those to the projects that are falling behind? How do I make sure that as I'm doing more and more and more projects every year, that I'm learning lessons from the projects I did last year, I'm implementing new quality checks before the projects are delivered, and really just, at the end of the day, the owner being able to have their own Procore where they log in, they see all this stuff, they can manage their teams, all this stuff, creates a huge amount of value for them, which at the end of the day is what's helped us drive such substantial growth with owners over the past few years. And I think Paul showed it before, but we're really just scratching the surface with owners. It's a very new business for us, and we're really excited about the growth potential here and feel really bullish on where this can go for us over time. So that's what we got on the owner side. So with that, I will transition it back to Tui, Paul, Howard to do Q&A. Thank you.